Do you want to know the real secret to grabbing attention instantly? It's not being louder, it's not doing more, it's not endless effort. It really actually comes down to biology. Our brains are really wired to pay attention to just three things. And when you know how to trigger those things, people will focus on you and they won't even really know what's causing them to want to focus on you. So right now you might be feeling like you are fighting tooth and nail for attention and people are just scrolling right past you. And I can totally understand how that feels, but I just want you to pause for a second and imagine a world in which people couldn't help but lean in. And it's because you've tapped directly into the way that their brain is programmed to notice things. So by the end of this video, you're going to learn how to really use the motivational triad to hook anyone's attention. And maybe you've heard that phrase before, right? Like hook people at the beginning of the video or the beginning of your content. And you're like, okay, but what even is a hook? Well, it comes down to this biology, which is the motivational triad. It's going to make it effortless for them to listen to because you've already done the heavy lifting for them. So let's go ahead and break this down, because when you use the motivational triad, you're not going to chase attention, you'll command it. I would say most people ramble and really overload their audience, but the problem here is the brain doesn't really want hard work, and you're the expert, right? So you know a lot of information. You probably want to share a lot of information because you feel like you are demonstrating your zone of genius. But to other people listening, it actually just feels really hard. And the first driver of the motivational triad is that people really want to seek pleasure. So if your message immediately connects to something desirable, right, like success or relief or excitement, people are way more likely to pay attention. Instead of saying something like, here's a productivity system, right? So if you're a productivity expert and this is your system, you probably want to talk about the system that you created, of course. But you could simply shift that into saying something like, hey, this is going to help you finish your work in half the time so you can finally relax. That is a future that people can picture and visualize, and it's going to bring them a lot more pleasure than thinking about a productivity system. When you do this, you're not making your audience figure out why it matters. You've already done the work for them, and that's what helps them kind of lean in a little bit more effortlessly. But pleasure, it is definitely not enough. If you really want their brains to lock into you need the second trigger. So it's easy to think that, when you communicate about avoiding pain, that it can be really negative feeling. And it definitely can be, but the reality is one of the fastest ways to capture attention is to talk about the pain that people want to avoid. And that's what the second driver of the motivational triad is to avoid pain. So the brain is wired to spot threats, mistakes, and problems. These are our survival instincts that really kind of flare up. I want you to think about the news. Typically, the news is cycling bad news again and again and again. And it's really because they know that this is what keeps the ratings up. People are looking for, hey, that's bad, so let me stay away from it. Even if it's news from across the country, if they can spot it, they can see it, they know what to stay away from, and so it keeps their attention. So instead of saying something like, you should eat healthier, you could say something like, hey, these are 3 foods that are silently draining your energy every single day. This is where the pain avoidance part of the triad really starts to kick in. And now people don't have to calculate why it's urgent. You've already positioned the risk up front, and so their brain automatically tunes in. And finally, we're moving into the third point of the motivational triad, the piece that makes people really stick with you instead of just notice you. So a lot of people forget that the human brain is naturally very lazy. We're lazy thinkers, and it's not on accident by any means. It's actually by design, right? Like our brains haven't changed since the beginning of time, but society has changed. And so this third motivational triad is to conserve energy. And if you think about back in the cave days, we really didn't know when our next meal was coming, and we didn't know if we were going to be chased by a lion. And so for survival, it was critical for us to be lazy so that we could conserve as much energy as possible so that we can survive. Now, our brains, like I said, they haven't changed since the beginning of time, so we still naturally really want to conserve energy. So if what you're saying feels really complicated, people will tune out. You know this from just going to school, right? Going to school, being in college or being in high school, when you're learning new things that feels complicated, you tune out really naturally. You have to fight to stay engaged. So one of the most important things that you can do is simplify. Talk as if you're speaking to a first grader. Be as simple and as clear as possible. So instead of saying something like, here's a 12-step process, which feels really long and hard, you could just say something like, hey, here are 3 shortcuts that anyone can use today and then you could talk talk about a payoff if you wanted to. So you've already organized the thought process for them. When you help them conserve that mental energy, they will naturally stay hooked because listening to you feels like an easy option. So let's recap, because once you master this, you will have an amazing ability to hook that attention and ultimately skyrocket. We covered the 3 forces of the motivational triad: to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and to conserve energy. And so when you kind of hook and frame your message in this way, you're removing all of the work, all of the heavy lifting from your audience's brain. And so instead of scrolling past, they're going to lean in because you've already done the thinking for them. So I would just encourage you to actually write out those 3 categories of the motivational triad and just kind of list out, okay, how do I help people conserve energy? How do I help people avoid pain? How do I help people seek pleasure? And this will give you 9 times out of 10, it'll give you this aha moment of how you can hook people in different ways. You'll have the same content that you typically share, but you just frame it and open it up a little bit differently so that people are more likely to lock in and finish the whole thing. So if this was helpful, comment below your biggest aha moment, and I'll see you in the next one.